This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Hello, Famous and Gravy listeners. Michael Osborne here. I'm back. It's good to be back. I have missed you. I have missed this show. I have missed conversations about dead celebrities and asking questions like, would you want that life? And what does a celebrity's life story teach us about ourselves? It's good to be back. I've got a lot to share. So today on the show, I'm going to do two things. The first is I want to give a little bit of an update to what's going on with Famous and Gravy right now. Some programming stuff, a little bit of a preview of the schedule. And then after I give that update, I have an essay I want to read, and I'll say more about that when I get to it. Okay, let me start with just a little bit of the programming update. So if you have been paying attention to Famous and Gravy, you probably know that we have been on hiatus for most of 2026. I took the last several months as a period of reflection. I had a lot of emails come in and a lot of calls with listeners. To everybody who made time to write or to talk with me, thank you. Thank you. It's given me a lot to think about, and I think has put me in a great place to steer the podcast going forward. I do want to say that I've already started producing new Famous and Gravy episodes. We've got 5 that are currently in production, 2 more are scheduled, and what I think is a really awesome roster of dead celebrities coming out over the next several months. With all of these, I need help with the opening quiz. I have a real deficit of the opening quiz segment, the Bluff the Listener segment that starts every show. So if you would like to participate, send me an email. I need voices. I also did want to say that one of the biggest decisions I've made with the show is that we are now going to be doing full-length video for Famous and Gravy. This is something I've really agonized over because I am, and will always be, an audio-first person, but so much of the growth in podcasting is happening right now on video. YouTube, Apple's now supporting it, Spotify. So I'm still approaching the show in the same way, but you might be watching this now rather than listening to it. I have had to do some real experiments to see if video is working. And one of the reasons I'm doing this episode today is it is a bit of a test. This is the first video we're putting out on the feed. So that's pretty much where the show's at. Oh, one other thing I did want to say. I'm doing a little bit of an experiment with the release calendar. I've always wanted the show to be weekly. I just like podcasts that come out once a week. It's sort of nice to have that regularity. One of the things that's been hard about that is that a lot of work goes into each episode of Famous and Gravy. So what I've decided to do as an experiment is it's a bit of a every third episode thing, a 2-1-2-1, where every 2 episode is going to be a traditional Famous and Gravy episode where we have the categories and we have the sort of guest hosts and normal format that we follow. Every third is going to be an off format episode. So my thinking here is that there's a lot of ideas and philosophy and themes that I really want to explore that have cut across episodes. And there's always been people I want to talk to and maybe interview or maybe do a deep dive with. And I've got some, what I think are really fun ideas for this. And I really want to hear from you about whether or not this is working. I think it's going to be cool. I'm excited about it, but I want to keep the channels open. So there'll be a new episode of Famous and Gravy every week, at least for the next several months. That's all the programming housekeeping stuff that I wanted to share with you. Let me get to this essay. So recently I was asked by my friend Alice Florence Orr, who is the managing editor for Podcast Review, if I would write an essay about podcasts on recovery. And I said, yeah, I'd be really interested in that. I'm a recovery guy. I love podcasts. Let's do it. I started listening to shows that are explicitly about recovery, and honestly, I didn't find anything I really loved. But it got me thinking in a different direction, that there are a lot of shows out there hosted by people in recovery, and maybe there's something to explore there. So Alice loved that idea, and the result of it is this essay. I'm going to read it now. If you want, it is also linked. The print version is linked in the show notes, so you can find it there. This essay is entitled, "Your Favorite Podcast Host is Probably in Recovery." Have you ever noticed that many successful podcasts are hosted by recovering addicts and alcoholics? Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard is an obvious one, but there's also We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle, This Past Weekend with Theo Vaughn, and the Rich Roll podcast. Not to mention both the My Favorite Murder hosts, 2/3 of the Smartlist team, and others across comedy, wellness, politics, true crime. It's the kind of pattern where once you notice it, you see it everywhere. Not all of these successful hosts are 12-steppers. But for those who do consider themselves members of AA or related 12-step programs, there's an elephant in the room. Specifically, Alcoholics Anonymous has an explicit tradition that discourages members from breaking anonymity, quote, at the level of press, radio, and film, end quote. This particular tradition was written decades before podcasts existed, but the spirit of the text speaks for itself. The rationale behind this tradition was born out of hard-earned experience in the early days of AA, when word of the program was first spreading. AA members discovered that if someone from the group was publicly singing the praises of the 12-step program, that person was likely to be perceived as a spokesperson. What's more, if that same person were then to relapse, which unfortunately is quite common, there's a serious risk that the public will conclude the program simply doesn't work. The result is that those seeking sobriety may be discouraged from giving the steps a chance. AA's coming of age coincided with the rise of broadcast media, so its founders were reckoning with a new reality of what it meant to be a public entity. The internet only accelerated that reckoning, ushering in a media environment that wrecked our notions of privacy. Today, we're operating in an attention economy that incentivizes oversharing, and podcast culture puts particular pressure on the norms of disclosure. Many shows are enticing precisely because they offer a vicarious experience of stories of individual struggle. It's debatable as to when an AA member is breaking anonymity. Sure, there's a strict reading of the tradition, but there's also space for interpretation, which will vary on a case-by-case basis. On one end of the spectrum, there's Rich Roll. The lawyer-turned-ultra-runner's brand is largely built on his experiences in recovery. Others take a more nuanced approach. Dax Shepard will go to great lengths to say he's not an AA spokesperson. Brene Brown's entire body of work is steeped in recovery principles, but she's never been explicit about her own affiliation. And 2/3 of the Smartlist team can't seem to help themselves from dropping 12-step innuendo. With all of these hosts and others, there's an added layer of complication depending on the degree to which they've been subjected to outsized scrutiny because of their celebrity status. All of this is to say that there's some gray area when it comes to anonymity in the 21st century. But while the anonymity waters have become murky in the digital age, there's another phrase in the same AA tradition that states AA is, quote, a program of attraction, not promotion. The idea here is that to the extent AA works for people with the disease of alcoholism or addiction, members of the program should adopt an attitude of show don't tell. If AA newcomers can see desirable qualities in recovering alcoholics, perhaps they will feel drawn and empowered to pursue a program of recovery for themselves. Personally, I can say that a podcast helped change my life. In the early 2010s, I was going through my own struggles, and around that time, I became obsessed with Mark Maron's WTF podcast. Throughout the run of the show, and especially in the early days of WTF, Maron walked a fine line between expressing gratitude for his experiences and breaking anonymity. For a certain kind of studious listener, it almost seemed as if he were modeling the program of action in every conversation. In fact, many of his early episodes sounded a lot like a public ninth step. That's the one about admitting your wrongs and making amends. A recurring reason for any listener to tune in to WTF was to see whether Marin was going to revisit his personal history with a guest, try to clear the air, and then ask, "We good?" As WTF was ascending, it was clear that Marin was a man who was working on himself. Over time, regular listeners learned that he'd been through 2 divorces, several career setbacks, and a string of damaged friendships. And yet, here he was trying to clear the air and make peace with the direction of his life. So, when I was bottoming out, and as I was trying to work up the nerve to ask for help, I vividly remember thinking, if Marin can do this, maybe I can too. It should be said that AA and related programs do not have a monopoly on recovery, and the 12 steps don't work for everyone. But for people in AA who have achieved anything resembling lasting sobriety, there is an ever-present temptation to shout from the rooftops that miracles are possible. This temptation is particularly understandable when you consider the feelings of hopelessness and desperation that surround the diseases of alcoholism and addiction. When a person experiences a wholesale turnaround and a new lease on life, they want to talk about it, damn it. From there, it's a pretty small leap to think, maybe I should start a podcast. And indeed, many do. One theory for why so many successful hosts have ties to recovery is that the rooms turn out to be a surprisingly good training ground for acquiring podcasting skills. Recovery asks people to get honest about themselves, often in front of strangers. One of the defining characteristics of addiction is denial, and lasting sobriety requires rigorous honesty. People who have been through the steps will almost inevitably cultivate qualities of humility and authenticity. They've also learned to become deep listeners, which is at the heart of what it means to be a great host. On top of that, the practical structure of a meeting also turns out to map well onto podcasts. Meetings will open and close with the same language, so there's a reliable script to work from. Speakers are prompted to share about their experience, strength, and hope. On its face, this is good creative direction. The runtime is established in advance, so if you're going to speak up, then you better get to the point. In so many ways, a meeting can look and sound a lot like a podcast. AA members who favor a rigid reading of this tradition will no doubt bemoan the cavalier attitude with which many podcast hosts break anonymity at a public level. But, to take the other side of the argument, perhaps there's something to be said for the myriad of hosts who are willing to cultivate parasocial relationships as an act of service to the newcomer. People have to learn about AA somehow, and maybe this is one upside of podcasting as a democratized medium. We often feel like we personally know the hosts of our beloved shows. And if sobriety is something you desire, maybe they have something you want. I only ever met Mark Marin in person once. I was 3 months into my sobriety, and he was doing a talk combined with a book signing at City Arts and Lectures in San Francisco. After the talk, I waited in line to get my book signed. And when I got to the table, I took the opportunity to tell him, "Mark, you changed my life in 2 profound ways. First, you inspired me to start a podcast, and second, you inspired me to become a friend to Bill." Marin closed the book, stood up, and came around the table, put his hand on my shoulder, and looked me right in the eye. He said, "Keep it up, man. Keep it up." Was he talking about recovery, or was he talking about podcasting? All I know is that I felt encouraged on both counts, and for that moment, I will always be grateful. So that was my essay on recovery and podcast, titled "Your Favorite Podcast Host is Probably in Recovery." Thank you again to Alice Florence Orr for asking me to write it. I hope you all enjoyed it. It allowed me to put a lot of thoughts that have been sort of swirling around my mind. And look, I know on Famous and Gravy, I talk about my experiences in recovery, maybe too much. I'll try and keep an eye out on that. It's just a place where I've learned a lot about myself, and there are ideas that I want to share, and I hope I'm doing it in a responsible way. I think there's probably a lot in that essay where you can read between the lines, and I hope you do. Okay, Again, if you want to partake in our opening quiz, please send an email, michael@hello@famousandgravy.com or hello@famousandgravy.com. Both emails work. I'm really happy to be back. I've missed you guys. I've missed the show. Thank you to everybody again who took the time to offer feedback. Thank you to Jacob Weiss for producing this episode. Stay tuned. I got a lot more coming soon. I look forward to it.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.